Two Girls, One Pod, Two Girls, One Pod. I'm one of the girls and I'm out of breath because I'm unfit, but also because I'm so excited. We just ran into each other on the street and I loved that. You know, I had a feeling we were going to see each other downstairs. And I just knew. As soon as I purchased that hand roll.
What flavour was yours?
Tuna.
Oh, I had a salmon.
Okay. As soon as I purchased it, I was like, as soon as I shove this in my gob, I know I'm going to see Alisha. And I did. So without further ado, this week, recording on Wurundjeri country, together in the studio, I have, oh my God, one of my dearest, loveliest, kind of old, well, not old, but
it
you've
does
known each
feel.
other a long time now.
It has.
Alisha Aitken-Radburn. Welcome
you.
to Two Girls, One Pod. You're going to be one of the girls.
I'm one of the girls on the pod. I am so excited.
I'm so excited to have you. Now, we were going to be recording next week while you were in Sydney and I was in Melbourne, and then you realised, smart girl, that you're coming to Melbourne.
I
so
needed
let's do
to
it
be
together.
with you.
Yeah, which is so much better.
Yeah.
Because we get to hug, we get to
We
look
get the energy. I got to see you with flakes of tuna and rice moving around your mouth.
And there's nothing better than me with flakes of tuna and rice ruminating around my mouth. Mastication is such a good thing.
I love a good masticate.
So do I. There's nothing better. Now, can I ask you straight up, firstly, I want to just ask you this about your name, which is something I've never asked you before. Aitken-Radburn. Whose name is whose?
So the Aitken is my dad and the Radburn is my mum.
Okay, I've read your book.
Yes.
And there's a bit in it about your dad, which is right early in the beginning. You must read this book because that's such a cool little story.
Yes.
The way you would like bring it out at parties and watch people's reactions.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, I encourage everyone to go grab the book, so I don't want to spoil the story. But basically, it is a hectic story, and I really found myself doing this sort of behaviour where I would throw it out there at parties in order to sort of, it was this behaviour that I can catch myself doing quite frequently in life where I'm trading something really vulnerable in the hopes that it will expedite the connection with somebody. And I have mixed feelings about it because I don't think that that's all bad. I think that it's just, I think I'm a pretty open person and so I do want to connect with people fast, but sometimes it does feel like I'm sort of spewing up my soul.
I think that comes with youth as well, like, you know,
yes.
and a bit of nerves and everything like that, which you mention in the book. But what I want to know about your name is why have you kept your father's name when you were brought up by a single mum?
Well, so it was actually my mum's decision.
Right,
yeah,
okay.
And I think that that's something I've always really, really admired about my mum. And I think this is something that I will take one day when I am a parent. I think it's really difficult when children grow up in environments where perhaps the start of their life, you know, it wasn't a nuclear family structure or whatever, and one parent is very constantly sort of belittling or bringing that other parent down, no matter what the context. I personally think that it is appropriate to protect children from that until they're sort of an age where they can have that adult conversation and understand the adult dynamics at play.
Absolutely.
Because it does really stop them from carving their own path if they want to. I think we project adult emotions onto kids a lot of the time.
All the time.
And that was something that Mum did really well, that I really admired her for, that she never, you know, there were lots of difficulties, and I did overhear the occasional sort of elevated phone call with my dad, but she really never indoctrinated me with perhaps what her view of the situation was at some times.
That's quite rare.
Yeah.
Oprah always used to, not always, but I just remember an episode where, she'd have all the experts in, and this one woman said, never, ever, no matter how bad your relationship gets with your husband or your wife or whatever, never badmouth them to the child, because that child, and it's not just that makes sense and that's going to hurt. No, that child is half made from them. You are insulting them, literally insulting them.
I've never thought about it like that.
And I've never forgotten it, because there's just so many, growing up, you've got kids who come from single parents, families, and, you'd go to someone's house and someone would be, the mother would be like, oh, he's a dick, and he's and you're like, that's funny, but not knowing the trauma that parent is instilling, that's going to take years of unpacking, and, and the child not ever knowing how to... what to do with that hatred that's coming at them.
Definitely, and I think it also brings, sort of going back to the idea of projecting adult emotions onto a child, if one parent is more proximate to the child than the other, then you sort of have this, you bring things like loyalty into play, and of course a child is going to be loyal to the person that they're most proximate to. And then it
gets to that point where they start playing each other because they know they can, and they don't know why they want to do that, and they hate themselves for it, not understanding any of the emotions that come with that kind of thing. So I really liked your mum. Your mum's name's Donna.
Yeah.
And I never forgot that, because we knew each other years ago, which I'll get to in a minute how we met. But as soon as I started following you, I saw your mum and I was like, I think she's only a bit older than me. So, and Angie's the same. Like, her mum is only a bit older than me as well. Yeah. So I'm actually closer to your mother's ages than I am to, but really connected to the young women that you are. And to read your book and see what an amazing upbringing you had, that, what you, the Vegemite weeks. And, okay, I'm just going to say first, the book is called The Villain Edit.
Yeah, we should have probably popped that in, and available at all good bookstores.
Nothing I say will ever run the way it's supposed to.
This is the best way to do it.
Good. Because this memoir is, I have not been able to put it down, and I have got that social media attention span now.
Yes. Me too. I can read. It doesn't mean I can't deep dive. Like, if I find something, if I find a Reddit thread, I'm like, I'll go in a rabbit hole and I'll consume everything.
And you can't stop reading. This is this.
Good. That. I'm so glad.
And you know how much this is a deep dive on the internet for me?
Yes.
That...
what have you done? Oh, yeah, I can see.
I'm reading it, and all of a sudden I'll go in my mind what time it is, and I'll look at the corner of the book to look for the time, like I do on my phone.
Oh my gosh.
That's how
I think that's a good compliment.
Well, it is a compliment, and I mean it as a compliment. It is such a great deep dive behind the scenes of The Bachelor and this kind of reality show. Firstly, I want to say how we met. Oh, God, there's just so much I want to say, but I remember seeing you on Honey Badger.
Yes.
And the Three Mean Girls, and... I really, really liked you a lot. I did not like the other two.
I'm getting this a lot. I'm getting that people sort of still, and I think I was. I think probably the moments I really wasn't featured very much at all, and then the moments that I was, I think maybe my villainy came off. I think I did really tread the line between the sort of funny, snarky narrator that was saying how the audience felt, which I think is what a lot of people who go on The Bachelor as a contestant, I think if you're not a front runner, I think a lot of people aspire to sort of play in that space.
If you can. This is the difference. Watching you, I can remember clearly watching you and going, oh, she's got away with her words, this one. She's so entertaining. I can see why they're keeping her around, because he's, clearly not interested. But I remember thinking to myself, or saying to Angie, she's a girl's girl. Like, she's just there for the friendships.
Yeah, absolutely.
She's not even into him. Like, but she's great because she would have your back. This is the kind of girl that will always have your back. And then I thought, still, bitch by association, like, and still, because we were on Gogglebox at the time, and that was what we were doing, like, and reality. And this is something that's in your book as well, about how there's a, people would be described that go on reality TV, and you put this in your book, as fame-hungry, self-centered egotists who just want to gain a following, flog some skinny tea, and you know how wrong you can be. And I had Ash Pollard on the pod a couple of weeks ago, and she said, everyone, like, it's amazing how many people think we've come out of the womb. We've not got any life.
I heard Ash talking about it, and it was so correct. And it was Steve Price who she had one conversation with him.
She watched his eyes go.
Eyes were open.
How wrong was I?
And I don't know where people get that from.
You know, the funny thing is that I had someone comment on that post, like when I put that up, and they said, you've been guilty of that in the past, you know, of saying that
as a commentator.
Yeah. And I've had to really have a think about it, because I am very guilty of it. But as I was reading your book saying it, I've written underneath it, yeah, but they can be.
And this is it. And every time, like, as I'm on the book tour and I'm talking about the book, I'm also trying to make it clear that the villain edit is my story and it's my experience of receiving that edit, and, you know, how I've reflected on my behaviour since and how I felt about the producers. It's all very me. It's not going to speak for every villain.
No.
It's so funny, Yvie. So I've, like, received some messages from when I first put the book cover up. I've received a bit of feedback from some other reality TV villains from other TV shows.
Can you name
who
them?
Sort of,
no, okay.
And I don't actually know many of them personally. But I think people have kind of seen the book cover and, funnily enough, like, sort of judged the book by its cover and thought that it was going to be like an advocacy piece for reality TV villains.
Oh, right.
And sort of like a...
What did they think they were going to be in it?
I think that they maybe thought it was more like rather than my story and a memoir, and
just a general,
sort of like a more factual, research-based deconstruction of the world that is TV production.
Okay.
And I had to sort of, like, I felt like, oh, hold your horses. Yeah. There's just a little bit more nuance in it than that. Like, I do think I interrogate some of the elements of the TV production process, which I think increasingly us as audiences and viewers are starting to be aware of. I think people are more...
So we are so much more savvy of what's going on. But that's what I find really interesting, is that back in the day it was... People would go on these shows. Like, I used to say, people would go on these shows, you know, for love. Like, Angie's season of The Bachelorette had your husband on it. And I'm just assuming he went on for love, because he doesn't seem like a fame whore.
Well, see, I didn't go on The Bachelor for love.
No.
I mean, it's hard.
I thought you did. So this is what... But you know what? I thought about this morning, and I can remember opening the fridge and thinking, who goes on TV for love?
It's hard, because there was definitely... I don't want the sort of, like, Daily Mail to capture that and be like, Alisha admits she wasn't there for love.
Yes.
I think the driving force was really the experience, because I think that any sort of smart woman is realistic enough to sort of look at the structure of the show and think, okay, 28 other girls, just some, like, basic sort of stats, not looking that great. But I remember I was, just before I actually went on the show, I was walking around, Sydney listeners will know the Bay Run in Drummoyne, and I was doing my laps of the Bay Run, and I was thinking, I definitely did have this glimmering hope that I do believe that we can meet our person or our people, whether that's romantic or platonic, in all sorts of places. And it's only through putting ourselves out there and, you know, really diving into experiences that we find those relationships. So I kind of had this glimmer of hope that, you know,
it could happen.
Why would I sort of write off the fact that I could get out of the limo, walk down the red carpet, and maybe that person is the love of my life. So I was
think a lot
open.
of people have that thought when they go on those kind of shows. And what we're talking about, like, people today are so much more savvy. Every single season you have the villains that come out of maths, and I mean, these are we have nothing on these villains.
And again, going back to, like, it's only my story, because I think that, like, you know, and you were saying that there are a variety of people on reality TV. Like, some people do go on there to flog skinny tea.
Yes.
And there are some villains amongst us
amongst all.
former
Yes.
villains that are probably not the best people and
Yeah.
really needed that experience of being put in their place. And even for me, where I would sort of like maybe on the spectrum of villainy, I'm a lighter villain. It was the spectrum of villainy. But even it was a learning experience for me because through the book, I've sort of managed to, when I've reflected on that time, there were definitely things that I was doing that were a part of my personality and that the TV production sort of, but the producers were able to sort of like pull on parts of my personality that made me do things that like I don't look back incredibly. I don't regret them deeply, but I, if I was in that same position now with all the growth that's happened in my life, part of that just being like 25 to 30, incredibly different.
Reading the book, the trajectory of going on The Bachelor first and then to Bachelor in Paradise is watching your savviness kind of come with a real beauty of still wanting to be there. When people come out of maths and they say, I wouldn't wish that what I has had happen to me since or during the airing on anyone, my advice to everyone is do not go on this show. But they get 2 to 20,000 applicants still every single.
That is so interesting to me. There is still. How did you find your Gogglebox experience looking back on the sort of TV production? Did you love it?
Yeah. It was just incredible because they put cameras in our room and walked away and microphones on us and just gave us TV to watch. I mean, you could not ask for it. And then they were like, do you want wine? And you had your dogs on the lounge with you. That was the best. There is no experience like that there is nothing better. And reality TV, to me, I'd always been offered reality TV. I knew because I used to work in publicity for Channel 7 and then I worked, behind the scenes. Not really, no. I only worked that way. And then reception, but I knew so many people in the industry. So they would always be like, we can fast track you if you want to go on, this or that. And I'm like, absolutely not. Reality TV is for watching. It's not for being on.
What about I'm a Celeb, where there's more of that production element than Gogglebox? Still good?
Oh God, no, it was awful.
Really?
It was awful. Like for me.
Yes.
Because I hate heat.
Yeah.
I hate discomfort. I hate not eating.
Maybe if there were ball gowns and some fairy lights and champagne.
No, none of that. I could not think of anything worse than getting a fucking ball gown. Champagne would have been great. Yeah. But no, give me a lounge, give me my dogs and go away.
It was really Gogglebox was really made for you.
But the jungle was awful because it wasn't, I'm not an outdoorsy kind of girl. And it was produced, so and if you went to the Talkie where you do your voxies and everything, and if you didn't say what they wanted, you couldn't get out of there.
Was there a producer on the other side?
Yeah, but you never got to see anyone. You just had voices. So I remember that when, I'm reading your book and all of the behind the scenes, this is why people want to read it. This is the first reason you want to read it. If you love reality TV, you will love this book so much because it is such a lovely behind the scenes delving into the machinations of the TV show and the application and also everything that comes with your feelings while doing that. It was so sprinkled with these beautiful anecdotes of, exes and stories and upbringings and your career. And then you had that dichotomy of
politics and reality TV.
I've never seen anything. I remember seeing you on there and going,
who?
What?
And I think it's been hard.
Seen that before.
It's been really, I've only thought about this literally right now in this moment. And I've sort of kept persisting and just doing what felt right for me. But I think probably what I found difficult was that I can't really think of someone that has necessarily come before me that has been they're just very unique worlds, being embedded in Australian politics and sort of spending a good 5 years through the sort of student politics. And I was just like marinating in that culture. And then a whole nother world is introduced.
Yes. Well, you see, you've got like once we got on to Matt Agnew and then Chelsea, you know, you have these, you know, astrophysicists.
Yeah,
and
multifaceted characters.
But what we didn't, you know, in the past we'd had women or men who were, you know, come from a world of seriousness and like complete opposite, but they did not have the personalities that you have. Personality, not that you've got many personalities. And there's nothing
Sometimes.
wrong with you do. That, you know, they were like, oh, this is a good get. Like, because normally, you know, if you've got someone that comes from a serious world, but you come from a world where you spin, you talk, you know, you're watching people, you know, negotiate things, and your job was. What was it? A
media advancer. So
I
would,
that. Never heard that word before.
So I would fly. I worked for context for our lovely listeners. I worked in Bill Shorten's office, and if he was, and it was during sort of around 2016. So we had a big federal election, and he was sort of like at the height of his career, and we were flying around all around Australia, and I would travel 2 days or so before him, and if he was going to a hospital or a school, I would go meet those people, and we'd sort of like map out what he was going to do. And reflecting on it is so interesting because I feel like I was almost his producer.
Yes.
So I was
That's why I believe going in, you knew what they wanted.
And I found people have asked me since, did I feel betrayed from that first season of the show when I came out and
they brought you back 6 weeks later.
They did. And I didn't feel betrayed because I think for some reason, and I don't know if it was my sort of exposure to media and politics, and I wonder how you sort of feel about TV producers in general, but I think for me, I probably didn't take it personally that I was sort of put out there as the villain because I guess I thought that they had a job to do.
Yeah. I have the same kind of feelings when it comes to like reality TV that is softly scripted.
Yes.
And when I have done it, I've watched it play out, and you know you're a bit more savvy because but not really. Like ours, we had one director come one day, and she was from reality TV, and she said we used to have this little speaker in front of the TV, and they'd be all in another room, all set up with
and they'd sometimes
everything.
give you like a prompt.
We'd never hear them. If we did, we'd both jump and go, whoa, you know, because you just never expect them. They called that the God mic, right? So they'd just say, oh, Yvie, you've touched your microphone, like, can you move it? Or it looks like, sounds like it's fallen down or something. And that was as much as we got. She said to us, wow, I remember we were watching Top Gun. And I started going on about movie. Is it?
Yes. He's only watched it. The Top Gun Maverick is on Qantas Entertainment at the moment.
That is
and
such a good movie.
He just watches it like every time he gets the
I did not like Top Gun, but I loved
didn't like Top Gun.
Maverick.
So tell me what happened during Top Gun.
Well, I'm writing Tom Cruise off because
you're like, nah.
Even I was 13 when that movie came out, and everyone was around me was losing their shit, and I'm like, am I in an alternative reality? Like, he's gross. But, you know, I was into really weird-looking boys. But so I'm going on a rant and how the leading lady ended up being a lesbian in real life, and Tom Cruise could turn anyone into a lesbian. I'm doing all this.
You're really like you're running your own race, and you're like not thinking about the God but Mike because it never comes on.
It never comes on.
And you're just like
that's what we were encouraged to do because you would have 16 hours of stuff that would be edited, and we were never ever directed, never produced. All of a sudden, this voice comes over. Okay. That was a lot.
She was really like...
And me and Angie looked at each other and we just shut down. Just completely shut down.
Just cramping your style.
We just were like, we were just told we were boring or, you know, so we just didn't say anything really. We just shut up. Because we were so unsavvy to everything. And then I get this phone call the next day from the EP and he was like, she's never coming back. I just want you to know we are so sorry. I've just watched the rushes and I watched you both just shut down.
And it's hard when you receive feedback like that because then and I don't mean to sort of relate it to the book so harshly, but I think it's sort of like when I was receiving this message from the audience that I was a bad person. And similarly, when someone gives you feedback, it can you can internalize it to the point where you're kind of frozen.
Yeah.
and you can't progress.
Yes. Well, there's that flight or fight, and they say now there's a freeze. There's a third one that people never really integrated into that kind of how you react to things. You either fight or flight. And it's like, no, a lot of women, we freeze.
She poured a bucket of water on your flame.
Yeah. So I just want to tell you the things I really liked.
Yes,
about
okay,
the book,
please.
The things that, okay, I love that you got called a lapdog turd. I think that is the best.
I think that's an amazing
troll.
insult.
Like just the way you wrote it. See you later, lapdog turd.
And it's like directly taken from my Instagram. It's still there if people want to go scroll back. But I just think
forever known in my heart as lapdog turd.
It's so imaginative.
Turd is such a good word. It's like,
it's very U5.
Yes.
Yeah.
Bill Shorten's speech at a pub. You were all at university. You were all into Labor. That was just beautiful to read because I'm a Labor girl.
Yes.
I'm actually a Greens girl, and it was really interesting your take on that as well, which I'll let people read. But grew up in a Labor family, and everything that you wanted to believe in a party was exactly the same as me. So when you guys see Bill Shorten walking past a pub and you all bring him in and he gets up on a table.
It was like one of his best moments. And it went like, TikTok wasn't around then, but it went viral. It was everywhere because
I don't remember that,
it was like he had been... he like wasn't in the constraints of being in an interview or
that's what I liked about it so much is that he had these most of it would have been a uni bar or a pub filled with uni kids.
Yeah, it was like
who were just really into him and what he believed in, and that's the shit I love. Like that's the politicians of yore, like the Gough Whitlam and that kind of thing. Like that they give you goosebumps
and
because of their belief.
I feel a bit bad for politicians because I think the sort of environment that they operate within, it's really hard to be that person all the time.
It really is.
And, part of that is their own responsibility because we do see politicians sort of make decisions because they're trying to sort of like either rise to power or retain power, and sometimes that's not the right decision. Sometimes they're sort of I think about it with Malcolm Turnbull a lot. I felt like, not to get too sort of in the weeds politically, but I felt like a lot of Australians were sort of looking at his prime ministership, not to sort of be like, wow, this is the beacon of progressivism that we've been looking for, but better than Tony Abbott.
Yeah.
And sort of like, we knew his background, a Republican, and then what do we get? A plebiscite on someone's identity?
Yeah.
Awful.
And it was a really weird thing because we were all of the left were kind of like, oh, this guy might be good. Like as far as the right goes, he was leftish.
I'm pretty sure he was dumped initially because he was like too progressive on the environment.
Yes. Yeah, he was. Yeah. That's right.
And so we were like, what has happened? You've just turned into an absolute shell of yourself.
And they do that. I mean, and you would have seen that firsthand, like that story about Kayla and ICAC and all of that kind of stuff. Like that was really heartbreaking and such an insight from someone that was in it, without like...
I think so much we receive our commentary on, scandals that play out in the media or in politics, through sort of like the Sydney Morning Herald and, The Age. And
you say in the book as well, like 6 p.m. news, you all know that that's your time where the majority of the nation is going to see, the sound bites, the words that you say, like don't stand in front of, if you want to look like you're into, infrastructure, make sure you've got a thing on your head or whatever, hard hat on it.
Jobs,
and all that kind of stuff. Now talking about pubs, I'm going to go back because that's where we met.
That's where we met.
We met at, what was that? The Newtown.
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, the one with the duckies in the...
Yeah. It was a Survivor finale night.
Yes. And you guys were... Had you been or were you just chiming like me?
Yeah. And I was standing at the bar and I was a little bit nervous because, Henry from Zen Hen from Survivor, he'd been... we'd been DMing.
Yeah.
And so that's why I was there, to meet him finally in person. And everyone else. So I was a little bit nervous, and Angie had friends there. So she was off with them. And you came up to the bar. And I remember, because I was really, I didn't know anyone, but, just like you try to...
I didn't know anyone either, I don't think.
Why you were there. I didn't know if you were on your own or not.
I can't remember who invited me.
No, I think...
Maybe it was St. Hannah's.
It was probably as well.
I wouldn't put it past him.
Who's the guy that looks like Steve Aoki?
Darren Singh.
That's who I think maybe you were there because of. Or did you not know him then?
I don't think I knew him. I think I picked him up I picked up a lot of friends that night. Yeah. It was a very energetic night in the meaning that I was just connecting with people, and I talk in the book about this story of when I first met Honey Badger on the red carpet, and I sort of know within the first 10 seconds of meeting somebody whether they're my person.
Yeah.
It's just the energy and are you matching my energy?
Yeah.
And I sort of knew in that first meeting, though I tried to sort of shift reality, I knew that this is not my future husband.
Yeah.
But that night I was like, oh, I'm marrying half of the people here. I love them all.
Yeah, and that was a great season of Survivor.
Yes.
I can't even remember who won, but I remember Benji was the baddie of that season, and there was a girl that had her leg broken. She had dreads.
Oh, there was Shani on that season as well.
But she wasn't there because she was at
Who else
Queensland.
was there that night? There was a lot of people there.
But you came up and just... I just felt the radiation immediately. Like, you radiate warmth. You have this smile, you have this energy about you. And I remember immediately thinking, villain, and then going, oh, I would really like her. And making kind of a decision that night that I was never, ever going to judge someone on the edit ever again because of, what you were. And I'm like, I'm such a dick in real life that could happen to me any time. It could happen to any of us.
Well, and I think that the thing that I appreciated about you as well, which I do think plays out to a degree sometimes in sort of media spaces, is you clocked me and, you did sort of register season villain from The Bachelor, one of them, and yet you still gave me a chance and embraced me. And I think some people are so sort of protective of their own brand that even if they do know someone and the core of that person, almost disassociate from them because...
Well, there's a reality thing, and maybe it's in an acting world as well, like where if they see you and they don't think you're quite up to their standard, they'll just ignore you in public. And it's like, I'm the kind of person, and Angie always found this hilarious about me, was that I love awkwardness, so I'd just be like, hi! The other reason I want everyone to read this book and why I think what they'll get out of it, that I've gotten out of it, is how vulnerable you are and honest about your need to be accepted. And I think that we can relate to that so much, and it's just so refreshing. I just want to thank you for writing it and for saying the things that we all have, that our egos will never let us say the truth. Like when you...
Oh, no, I'm nervous now.
Absolutely not. When you the lying as the child about things like that you're on Uncle Toby's ad and that you changed the spelling of your name and all of these things. I'm like, oh, you flung yourself down a set of stairs to break your leg because you thought casts were awesome.
Everyone had a cast.
Same. I've done all these. I pretended I had leukemia because my cousin was dying of it. Like, what the fuck? Who does that? But we all do. That's who.
We do, and we don't talk about it.
We don't
talk about the underlying, like, why we are doing that.
And every child does it. And, the funny thing is, watch my nephew do it, trying to get the attention that they clearly crave the way I did. You still do that. My nephew we would be watching TV and he'd go, I'm in that ad. Yeah, that's me.
Exactly. I'm like, who did I think I was?
I know. And the naivety and innocence of a child thinking they
Yes.
can say something that you'll believe is, and, no one really calls a child out on it because it's endearing and adults understand where it comes from.
Yes, and I think you are sort of the sort of like foundation piece is that you're wanting to be embraced and liked and
Absolutely. And, your upbringing, you didn't have siblings.
yes, siblings is, and I
And
don't
single
interrogate
mum.
it too much, but it is an interesting part of the book because I do think, and I would love to read some more about only children because I do think that being an only child has kind of coloured the person that I am.
Definitely.
And I think what I write in it is that I, particularly in school, when I was doing all these like really odd things of just being like, yeah, I'm that blonde chick in the Uncle Toby's ad to like a random group of girls to ingratiate myself.
Like, how much was it? What was the director's name?
Yeah,
Oh, really?
yeah.
Okay,
And
where did you shoot it?
I didn't think that like just being myself and having a nice conversation was going to be good enough. I needed some sort of material marker to impress
Yes,
them.
me too.
But I say that I struggled at school because I was a big try-hard and I hadn't really been socialised by brothers and sisters who I think can sometimes knock the annoyingness out. And so I look back at that little girl and I quite like I love her because she was so earnest.
Yes.
Someone asked me, they were talking about like what are the drivers of going on reality TV, and for me, I think there was a little inner child part in that there was a part of me as a kid that wanted to be the star.
Absolutely.
I was a dancer. Like mum would take me to drama classes.
Yes.
My first email address was Star in a Shadow.
Do you still have it?
No.
Shame.
It would just be filled with a lot of Neopets emails.
Oh my God, I love and the honesty of you talking about that kind of thing in this book is just, it's so refreshing. Like it's, there's a self-deprecation about you that is just so refreshing.
Why do you think people don't talk about it? Because it's my
shame.
Embarrassed shame. Yeah.
Shame is such a driver. It's just, it's and to talk about shame, we don't do it enough.
Yes.
Either about having the shame and then what we're so ashamed of, but we're programmed to be ashamed. And, growing up, if you love yourself, oh my God, she loves herself.
And even now, I watch women on social media and people sort of commenting like, oh, you're so confident in this really like neggy way.
Yes. Aren't you a confident kind of, I don't know why.
Yeah.
Oh, it's hideous. And that's, I think the book is inspiring because people will read that about you. And a friend and I were talking last night at dinner about pessimism. And my brother at the age of 5 went to child psychologist and he was diagnosed as a pessimist.
As a pessimist,
My parents were like, well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, he'll always be negative. Like, it's just his go-to and it's just him.
Like a baseline.
Like a baseline, a default. Because I've realised I'm not. I'm an optimist, an ever optimist, as you are.
Yeah, and I think that even though the book does explore some themes of that sort of craving for external validation and at times being quite deeply insecure and the insecurity being a driver for some of the behaviour that I'm not the proudest of. And so while I do try and cover those themes, writing the book has also helped me discover the things about myself that I really love. And it is that optimism. And it's, I will try at anything.
And not only at anything, you see the good in people, no matter what. Like when we get to the part with Jules and everything and, your mum says you have to do something. Like he's getting trolled pretty badly after this. And, I remember we had a coffee at Blackburn
Yes.
Cafe and, you were...
Was that Had it gone to air yet?
It was just, I think we were about to, it was about to go to air, and then we saw each other again.
I gave you the primer. I rolled you through everything. I was like, this is what's happened.
Yeah. And I thought it was going to end well. I don't know why, because you'd left it with just wait and see what happens.
Oh, I did. Who am I?
You were still in touch with him, so I assumed you just weren't telling me it was a great love story.
That's also a weird thing for me to do, go to coffee with you and be like, just dangle the carrot of gossip.
I would have been, don't tell me everything, because I love watching everything for the first time.
I think you were.
So I would have been, don't tell me everything. And you're like, are you sure? I'm like, no, this is really good. So I actually got a shock when he turned out to be the dick that he was. And then, you did that post about him and everyone was like, whatever. But just about him, was he the one that used to do he would say grommet and someone...
Wallace and
Gromit pointing finger guns or something?
He's very he's very into sort of like your meme culture.
Because me and Angie used to laugh our heads off. And all of his reactions to everyone was Wallace and Gromit finger guns. Just like, I don't know whether I love this guy. I hate this guy, but that is a brilliant response because he just keeps giving it to everyone. It must have been driving them insane, which always makes me happy. But you have this optimism about seeing the best in people. I want to ask you about the first time you went into Bachelor in Paradise, and Kat did as well. And I remember watching that at the time and being really sad because she was so upset. Like, it was visceral for me. Like, I went with people's feelings here. Like, this girl's really upset. But in the part of the book, you don't go into detail after this, but Paddy decides he doesn't want to be with you because your true colours came through because you were supporting Kat.
Yes.
What the
Yeah, it was interesting. So I did, I did do something, I snipped at Nathan Favreau. We're getting into the sort of weeds of rose ceremony politics, but Kat was left without a rose, and I think she was sort of under the impression that one of the guys was going to save her, and that was her backup plan because she really thought she'd connected with Richie, and now we're really getting back into the back into that season. But she thought she was going to be okay, and I remember before you go into the rose ceremony, they sort of sequester you into your own little rooms.
Right.
And we were dancing. We were we had our champagnes and we were doing a boogie, and she was just so confident. And then when it didn't play out, I think it was that really dramatic drop off when you're expecting something to happen. And so I did make a snide comment. I was it was Nathan Favreau and he'd given a rose to Brittany Weldon. And I said I didn't realise that you had that much of a connection with Brittany, which was not a nice thing to say because Brittany was just as deserving of a rose than Kat was. But there was that dynamic of, defending my friend and being quite emotionally invested. And just the fact that, I think that was so visceral for Kat, that rejection, because I think she had come into the process thinking, this is my redemption.
I believe they set her up.
And I think I do wonder whether it was already, I say it in the book, whether there was already a whiteboard out the back that had her leaving on the first night.
They would have been not one of these guys is going to be into her. So she'll be the first out, and this will be great because she'll probably lose it, It will push her buttons a bit.
And that's hard as well because and I struggle with this concept of the show. I talk about the fact that I was sequestered before the main season with this amazing girl called Autumn. And she was just lovely. We fully bonded.
Yes.
And then she was eliminated on the first night.
Yes.
And I was I felt quite affronted by it.
Yes.
I was it all felt very arbitrary. I was well, then how are we making our decisions? Because I felt going up to Honey Badger and be okay,
we
need to
this is weird. I don't know you, but I think you're making a huge mistake.
Exactly.
There's that actual page of the book. I dog-eared as well because when Autumn left, it was so poignant. And this is why I think you're a great writer. I really do think you're a great writer, and I'd actually love for you to write a novel, because I think that you can construct things really well, and you know how to do an arc and
my editor
all of
said that as well. So
totally,
maybe fiction's in my future.
Please, because you can't do another memoir right now.
Yeah, I've got to live a bit more life. Give me another 5 years.
Please.
I also don't want it to be as chaotic.
No. But that on that very same page, when you got a rose and she didn't, you wrote, "But I'd been chosen."
Yes.
And that was so honest and awful, and the way you felt about that, because that's us, that's, you know, is that survival of the fittest? Is that why we're here? Like, at the end of the day, we want to be chosen, and
you're
so honest about that.
It's really hard, because I felt really challenged, and it was something I thought about before I went on The Bachelor, but then it sort of dissipated from my headspace, and now it's returned while I was writing the book, because I was thinking about The Bachelor and the ranking process and, you know, the 28 women there. And I think that probably as a culture, we've decided that it's fine because The Bachelorette exists, or, you know, I don't know what the plans are for The Bachelorette at the moment.
Yeah. Nothing.
But, you know, I think we sort of thought, oh, no, it's okay. It's the same for both genders. And I think there's a little bit of a parallel with our experiences in the real world of, you know, having our photo featured on Tinder and for people to judge and rank us, or to go on dates with, and maybe perhaps they've had another sort of 2 dates that week and decided that you're like, I might keep her on the roster. Talk about rosters these days. And so I think that there's some parallels. And so I think that really what The Bachelor, how it twists the knife in, is not receiving as a rose's rejection.
Yeah. And from a complete stranger. It's a very bizarre. I've never liked The Bachelor or the franchise or the idea. I used to call it Mormons Are Us. And it was like, because, you know, I'd be watching Big Love at the time. Like Bill Paxton would have, like, it was a brilliant TV show, and you should go back and watch it. It's one of the best made TV shows, and it was set in Utah, Bill Paxton, and all these amazing actresses. But they were all his wives, like, and it was just how it really happened.
So you have this.
So I'm like, well, this is like, and at that point in the beginning, there was no Bachelorette, and then it didn't matter. It was just like, you know, and then Angie went on it, and I had to keep my true feelings inside. Because even though she knew I hated this show, I had to support her all of a sudden for going on a show that to me was heinous. That just the process of it, not the people.
Not necessarily even the gender or like whether it's a feminist. Like, I don't think it holds itself up to be this sort of like feminist, you know, work of art.
Just that pick and rejection.
Yes.
It is. And to watch people's hearts get broken for our entertainment.
I was surprised because I did sort of just, and I think I don't think we talk about it very much.
We don't talk about it enough. And it's still going.
And things like I know that this has had a resurgence recently, but I feel the same way about the MAPS picture ranking game that they do every season.
They keep bringing it in too,
and it is because it is the vehicle to
so much drama
to actually a physical representation. And this is what I do find interesting to interrogate about reality TV. All of these very material activities that serve to rank and judge and get those emotions from us of rejection, of, you know, attacking our self-worth.
Yeah.
And sometimes, you know, people will respond differently. Their partner will put their photo not right at the top, and maybe they'll be self-protective and they'll pretend that it's all fine when really it is not all fine.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, it is no different to me to any of those shows like Biggest Loser or anything where we're looking at people's physical. And another reason I absolutely hate The Bachelor is there's never been a plus size woman or man on there. And it just shits me to tears. You even meant, like, you know, you wrote in it that you were a size 8 just in case because you oscillated.
And isn't that, I'm so glad, because I was nervous when I wrote that. I was like, I don't want this. I don't want people to read this and read it as fat phobia. I think it's
No,
our
it's
societal
not.
fat phobia.
It totally is. You would not have gotten the show if you'd written down a 14. You wouldn't have even got through to the next part where they looked at you. And that's I hate that about
I get
so many of these shows.
frustrated as well because I do think that there are ways to do this better. Like, The Golden Bachelor is happening in America at the moment.
That?
Okay, so I think the guy, don't quote me on this, but he's around 70.
Oh, yeah.
The lead is 70.
Yeah.
He's a hottie.
Yeah, of
Still-
course. A silver fox.
Yes. And they've just released the women recently.
Yeah.
And I was so fearful, and I saw it in the sort of rhetoric in I'm a part of lots of different sort of bachelor communities, and it's a thread of the book that I sort of unfortunately embed myself a little too far. But I do get the tea, and people were fearful that basically they were going to cast this older man and then all of the women would be like 45 or something.
But they're not.
They're sort of between 65 and 75.
But are they all thin and beautiful?
There is, I would still say that the size diversity is where it's lacking.
Yeah.
And I just don't.
That
It's
must
so
have been hard to cast
disappointing.
because at that age,
They are all smoking hot.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's enough in America to find smoking hot women between 60 and 70 or whatever. But
And it is
it's like that
it's-
time of our lives after the menopause, our bodies have changed for a reason. Like there is, fat on our deposits on our body for a reason to protect our organs, to protect our bones. That the fact that a woman at that age, if she isn't naturally thin, to do the damage to be thin because of our, standards, society standards.
I just wish reality TV's worked towards mirroring reality better.
Me too.
Because I think
that's why Big Brother is wonderful.
I think it would result in better TV.
Yes.
That's the frustrating part. It's not. I think people hear these debates and they're like, oh, it's just like tokenism and you're the diversity police. But it's just going to lead to better outcomes. People will see themselves on screen and it will be far more interesting.
And, the latest reiteration of Big Brother's rate so poorly, and I don't know why they keep putting it on. It's like you just keep putting hot people on there.
Oh my God,
like, what's going on? Where are the Sarah Marie? Where is
the beauty of Big Brother were like my favourite Big Brother moment, and it's sort of alluded to in the book, was there was Merlin, who was an iconic Big Brother character, famous for the producer. The mention that it gets in the book was because, Merlin from Big Brother was famous that when he was eliminated, he came down and he's doing the big elimination show with Kulin, and he sort of like stowed away a poster that said "Free the Refugees," and he put duct tape over his mouth. And when I was trying to, you have to work with the producer to come up with like whatever your entrance is, and they always are pushing for novelty. And I did not want that because I analysed the show and I was like, I'm going to get that doop-de-doo music. It'll be doop-de-doo, like jester. And she suggested...
You did want to go to the audition in a wetsuit.
I did.
But you didn't want to walk down the aisle, the red carpet.
She wanted me to put a piece of duct tape over my mouth and stare into his eyes.
One over his. That's just
no.
Who comes up with it?
And so my favourite Big Brother moments was there was a moment before that iconic moment of Merlin, and there was actually a really, I don't know how we would look back at it now, but at the time it kind of opened up this national conversation. There was a real sort of like ochre, bogan, racist guy.
Paul, with baked bean teeth. Hated him.
And they had a really...
Huge fight.
And I actually think
it really divided us, didn't it? Because you either team Merlin or team baked bean teeth.
And so sorry to say bogan. I feel like it's a bit classist.
No, he was. Still is probably. It was awful.
I think that they resolved it a little bit.
They did. Because
and that was interesting.
In the house.
Because I love that conflict resolution.
Yes.
And I was sort of thinking about that in the book. And what I loved about Bachelor in Paradise was the format was when you're having conflict with people, you have to discuss it.
Yeah.
And I wish we did that more
Me
in the
too.
real world.
Yeah, me too.
People have these really protracted family disputes that I think could just be, I know it's a utopia to say, everyone call Relationships Australia and let's just get in a room and have a mediated discussion.
No,
but life is short.
Yeah, it really is. And if people matter to you, you need to make that kind of, it's when we're in the jungle, you have to, as you know, you've got no phone, you've got no internet, no reading material, not even a pen. Like we were writing on the dirt,
Oh my gosh.
I wasn't, but
I would be doing eyeshadow.
Yeah.
Like, oh.
we did all of that, like the contouring and everything.
Oh,
but
Georgina.
what the best part of that, and I hated the first 2 weeks, and then I had a moment, and then which I've told all my listeners about before, but after that, the couple of weeks after that, for me, giving in became like school holidays.
Yes.
When you would stay at a couple of friends' houses night after night after night, and it'd get to the point where your conversations, you could start a conversation today and then stop it, and then tomorrow you could pick it up again, but you've had all this other stuff or nothing in between, or you've just been riding your bikes. We had nowhere to go, just like you were when you were a kid. You had nowhere to go, so you were just like hanging out and just, keep hanging out with the same people, having these conversations that we don't get anymore. We don't. And
do you feel like you got this really beautiful, like I think I've had such a unique experience on The Bachelor, just in that our phones were not there. Yes. And I sort of touch on it in the sense that, there's a story in there about how I'd had this whole relationship with Jules, and then we were sequestered, and one of the producers let us look up their Instagram profiles. And I realized that I hadn't seen how he represents himself to the world.
Yes. And
you're just getting this very like suspected. Yeah. They were dating 6 months down the track. But it's quite a beautiful thing to meet people. Now Mormons Are Us has just popped into my head again. But it feels very like, it feels like...
Well, Bachelor in Paradise is very different to The Bachelor, because it had that Big Brother feel where you were just a bunch of people without your phones.
Yes.
Just were having and that fly
just
on the wall
making out
thing,
and having good discussions.
Yes. Yeah, and that's what I think I don't know why that got canned, and why Big Brother has gone towards that Survivor feel where, because
I love the inane conversations. Yeah, That's what I loved.
Be a fly on the wall and get your editors to do their job.
Yes.
Like, just troll through and
that's good producing.
Brilliant producing.
When producers are able to, and I've seen it done to varying success, where they really do find the points in the story that are compelling, and they almost help you lean into those.
Yes. There's some great stories of yours in there that I think people are really going to love, about like the producers coming in, and by the time the third show comes around for you, you're an old pro, and you know the producers, Alex, your psych. Like, I loved that you used the psych so much. Our Gogglebox psych was just wonderful, and I did the same thing. I remember going to the jungle. Our psych was an ex-Marine.
Oh.
And
there's not very many reality TV psychs, so I feel like I might know your Gogglebox psych.
I thought he was going to make me drop and do 20 every time we spoke. I was like, I was
so connected to production by the third season that Glenn, when we met on that third season, there was a moment we'd gone on a date and we were put in separate rooms, and he thought that I was a production plant because there was a thin wall between our rooms, and I was having such a chummy conversation with one of the producers that he was like,
you're in on it.
It's a twist. It's going to be revealed. And I'm going to that would actually be kind of interesting though. Me just float on in, and then I spill the tea in a big circle like a vocal bulla banquet. You've said this about this person.
Well, it's so funny because the whole show, it's all yours. This book is all these 3 shows, and there was so much that happened on these shows. But this book is only about yours, and I really liked that you don't throw anyone under the bus. You're not mean about anyone. You're just how you felt, how these experiences and people made you feel. So we got to wrap up because I could talk. Obviously, we could talk for hours, but thank you so much for being here.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate you, and I'm so glad I got to see you in person.
Oh my God, it's made such a difference.
Please
and it's
go
been.
and buy her book, download. Have you done an audio?
Not yet. It's
You're doing it, though.
recording it in late October. I'll be back in Melbourne, so lock me in.
Locking you in. If you've loved this episode, let me know. Let Alisha know. Follow her on the Instagrams and all the socials. You know, you can always email me. I love being in your ear holes, and thank you for having me. And thank you for having Alisha this week. Just so incredibly lucky to have these beautiful women coming into my show, and I'm just so honoured. Thank you so much for being here.
I've loved being a girl on the pod.
Yeah!